you're in the right place. Dr. Kris Wusterhausen has been in your shoes, and he's done the work and can show you how you can turn things around. In this podcast, he'll share his personal stories and advice on how to create the life you want for yourself as a provider and as a business person. You'll learn how to reclaim your life, your time, your energy, and most of all, reclaim the dream you had when you started your journey to become a doctor. Welcome to the Dr. Kris podcast. All right, welcome to this first new version of Conversations with Dr. Kris Wusterhausen. He's the owner of the Research Clinic, and Dr. Kris and I have been doing a little work together. My name is Steve Brown. I'm a co-host here, and we're going to talk about a couple of things. So Dr. Kris has a really interesting story about how he began to take more ownership of his health and started to really think about cellular medicine, about our cells, and how we can take responsibility for complementing what our physicians initially set out to do. This led Dr. Kris on a journey of really thinking about his path that he was when he was working as a general physician. Maybe I'm not saying that right, but general practice, and it's like started to really evaluate his path, where his future was going, and what he felt maybe wasn't quite right. So, Dr. Kris, welcome, and I'd love to kind of hear your backstory there.
Thanks, Steve, for the intro. I'll try to keep it kind of short because I can ramble on about this for a while. As I tell my patients, I always give them like the 2 to 3 minute version. I woke up in my mid 30s, actually 34 to be exact. I was overweight, not feeling well. Even though I went to the gym every day, I was gaining weight consistently, really stressed out. And I just realized I came to this point in my life that how are you going to do what I ask you if I'm not walking the walk? One thing we always say is you got to walk the walk if patients are going to actually follow you. And so I went on to a journey of trying to figure out what I needed to do with my own health, because I felt like in my primary care practice, it was literally one Band-Aid on top of another. That's what I felt like I was doing. And as I always say, I'm not trying to offend any primary care physicians out there. What they do is a really tough job, and it is the path that's set for them. I just don't believe it has to be the path set for them. And so at 34 years old, I found out that I was low testosterone, 320 to be exact. I was pre-diabetic, hyperlipidemic, so my cholesterol levels were through the roof. And basically, I decided there had to be a better way. I was lucky enough to find some education out there, and I really started diving into learning because we get out of we go to medical school, we go into residency, and most of us, we're constantly learning. And then we get out of residency, and many times for many providers, there becomes this lull of, I don't really have to learn anymore. You just kind of go into your practice and you just start doing things. And I heard one time, like, most physicians prescribe 50 medicines. They get comfortable with these 50 medicines, and that's all they prescribe. And every now and then you might reach out of that box, but for the most part, here's these 50 medicines, I'm prescribing them every day. And complacency starts to kick in. And I really felt like that's what happened to myself and my practice. And so I found this education. I realized that there was maybe a better way to do things. And so I got on testosterone replacement, proper testosterone replacement. I learned about nutrition and exercise. Most providers, I will challenge providers on this, most providers do not know much about nutrition. There's this thought because they have a doctorate of some sorts that they know about nutrition. My medical school, the nutritional course was 1 hour, and they taught the food pyramid, which in my opinion is bullshit. And so that was my nutritional knowledge, when I'd come in and talk to patients, but yet they think I know all this information because I'm a doctor. So anyway, really learned about nutrition and exercise and just living better. And that really worked for me for quite a few years until I got into my early 40s to mid 40s. I'm just about to turn 50 now. and kind of had a little bit of a reversal of my life as well. Again, I had really gotten much healthier. My body fat had dropped down below 15%. I was 35% when I started, down to under 15%. Libido was great, sexual performance, all those things that as guys we want was great. And then in kind of mid 40s, I started to go backwards a little bit, not as far as I did in my mid 30s. And then that's whenever I was exposed to peptides and started learning about actual cellular medicine. So I'm really big into bioidentical hormone replacement. Cellular medicine is exactly kind of what it says. It's all about the cell. We're made up of 30, 40 plus trillion cells. We turn over billions of cells every day. And the better that we can have all these cells operating, functioning, communicating with each other, I believe that it can positively affect any disease and prevent disease, but not only prevention of disease, but make your chronic diseases better. So now we've implemented, really looking at different peptides and really, so importantly, those lifestyle modifications. Many times when we talk to our patients, these aren't hard things to do. They don't, I find that patients need somebody to guide them. They understand that, oh, I've heard about fasting and maybe it's good for me, but how do I do it? How many days a week? What does it actually do for me? And I feel like when we can just explain some of these more really simplistic things to them, we can make gigantic changes in people's lives for the positive with just simple changes with time. But so that's kind of a long story. That was more than 2 to 3 minutes, but that's kind of their journey. And I still go through the journey with my patients every day. I tell every single patient that I see, what I tell you today, I may tell you something different in a year, because as we learn new things, and my patients, I think, get a little bit excited when we come back from conferences, because maybe we learn something new and we can implement these things. Every time I go to a new conference, I have a few patients in the back of my head like, oh my God, that might work for Bill. I need to get him in there. He's been having problems like this. I've got something new to try. So it's a really exciting time to be in medicine. I personally believe that what we're doing now, we're just probably 4, 5, 6 years ahead of the curve. And physicians will be getting more and more physicians will be getting on board with this as time goes by.
So first, kind of give us a little background on your credentials. Instead of me messing them up or saying a word wrong, why don't you kind of go through your list? You talk about your relationship with BioT, Dr. Seeds, et cetera.
Sure. So first and foremost, I'm a board certified family physician. Have been for 20 plus years. The town that I practice in, I just passed my 20-year mark here in town. So that's my first credential. But as far as, I originally was trained with a anti-aging company called Synergenics. They're still in existence. I worked for them for 3 or 4 years, learned a ton, but also the business model that they employed just kind of wasn't what I wanted to do long-term. Still friends with a lot of those physicians, but I decided to do my own thing. Since then, in my practice, I do a lot of hormone replacement, which one of the routes of administration that we use, actually the majority of time in our practice, is hormonal pelleting. And I work with a company named BioT, and I've been with BioT for quite a few years. I am actually faculty there as well, and I actually head up their peptide program for BioT. I think actually the number now has grown to about 6,000 providers. And so if you're one of those providers and you have a question about peptides, I'm the guy that you talk to. And I just got back like this weekend from Puerto Rico doing some lectures for BioT for some of the Puerto Rican providers down there. And then recently, Dr. William Seeds by most is considered the pioneer of peptides in the United States. He's a orthopedist up in Ohio that also has a practice in Beverly Hills, but he is a brilliant doctor, a great person. And I am lucky enough that he started an educational program called SSRP, Seeds Scientific Research and Performance Group, about 15 months ago. And I was added as faculty member of that organization, I'm going to say about 3 months ago. And so we do lecturing for SSRP as well. And I guess at the moment so we do some national lecturing for these different entities, and just try to help our patients and other providers kind of get on board with this way of medicine.
What I'm really attracted about this medicine that you practice is there's an inherent conflict between someone that wants to take ownership of their health. They do research, they read articles, nutrition, this, and so they have questions. But then when they go see their doctor is not aligned with this. Their doctors, for the most part, there's the mindset of a one size fits all. As insurance wants you to fit in this parameter and this parameter, then you just continue doing what you're doing. And or if there's a prescription, it's one pill a day mindset. And it's like, this doesn't feel right to someone that knows that they're unique, their health is, one of a kind, and there's a responsibility they need to take. And I think there's this craving of, I would like to have a relationship with a doctor that would want to work alongside me, help me understand what's going on with my personal labs and what would be the things that I could do to support us in improving my health. And that's what I'm really attracted about the way that you go about medicine. Why is this important to you?
Well, so, and I guess I should have said in my story, about 12 years ago, I started to split off from the traditional model of medicine because I actually came to not only my own health, but I realized I couldn't do that type of medicine for the next 30 years. I just couldn't do it. I actually got to the point where I even thought about going back and becoming a lawyer. I was like, what can I do? Because I just don't enjoy this job, I guess is what I would say. I was inundated with paperwork. I think patients have a general idea of what their poor primary care physician goes through, but you really don't know for sure unless you were there every day. We would see 30 patients, get done at 5:30, and I'd have another 2 hours of paperwork to do. And it just, no matter how hard you worked, the mound just got larger. And what I tell patients is I didn't work for them. I worked for the insurance company. The insurance company dictated what we did with Steve. Do I want an MRI? Well, will your insurance let me do an MRI? I want this medication. Well, will your insurance let me use that medication? No, they won't, but they'll give me the choice of these 3 medications. Well, those aren't the ones I want, but it's the ones I got to use. And don't get me wrong, there's always going to be a piece of that medicine that's going to exist. But we moved over to the cash model, 12 years ago. And it was a big leap of faith for us because, going to a cash model in an insurance practice, and I changed complete practices, opened my own door with, no patients, and have built it up over time. But you would be very surprised at how many people understand the need to spend money on themselves. Like I tell guys sometimes I'll get a guy in and his wife brings him in and they're giving me a little bit of hard time about the money aspect. They're like, I've got insurance. And I'm like, yeah, and how's that working out for you? I mean, in all honesty, I'm not trying to be a smart ass, but how is that model working out for you right now? And they'll still give me a little bit of hard time. And we live, deep in Texas. And I usually can look out and say, which truck is yours? And like guys love to talk about their trucks, right? And oh, that one over there. And I'm like, that looks like that's about an $85,000 truck. And I'm asking you to spend $500 or $600 on yourself that you would gladly spend on your truck, but you won't spend it on yourself. And we don't realize sometimes that by spending time and effort and money, and sometimes, I hate to say it, but spending money will get you focused on doing things, on needing to put the effort into yourself so that not only do you look better, feel better, think better, but you get to have better quality of life. And now Steve can do his job for another 10 years at a high level where that wasn't probably going to happen otherwise. And when you can start to refocus people's thinking, now some people inherently come in and they think that way. They're locked on and they're looking for what we offer. I tell my patients all the time, we'll spend as much time as we need. And if I don't have enough time today, we'll bring you back next week and we'll do another 30 minutes, 45 minutes. We'll keep working through this on a weekly, bi-weekly basis until we get where we need to be. I will put as much effort into it as you put effort into it. I have some patients that come to me and they don't put much effort into it. I'm being honest. They come in every 6 months. I give them a few things. I say, hey, come back in 2 months. They come back in 6 months. that's on them. As I tell my patients, I want you to do whatever you're comfortable with. I have others that are here all the time, and I think that's great. They're showing an interest in their health. But we just know that there's such simple things that we can do to just function better. I mean, I could throw literally 50 things at somebody, but what we really try to do is be very precise with what we're doing for what a person needs and what are they willing to do. I had this discussion in Puerto Rico this weekend. I can easily tell you 15 supplements that would be great for you, but who's going to take 15 supplements a day? So we've got to choose. Most guys are going to 3 to 4, so I got to pick the 3 or 4 I think are going to be best for Steve, so that he does best. And maybe we do these for a little while and then we rotate to something else. But there is a huge subset of patients today that are just like you said. They're wanting to walk this journey with someone. Unfortunately, the traditional system is set up. They always talk about prevention in the traditional system. There's no real prevention in the traditional system. Their prevention is getting a colonoscopy at 50, getting a chest x-ray every so many years, getting a PSA once a year. And I'm not knocking those things. They're necessary, but there's so much more than that. I mean, I can tell my patients if they're going to become a diabetic years in advance of them becoming a diabetic. In the traditional model, studies show that when a patient is diagnosed with diabetes, they have had diabetes for 5 years. So just kind of mull that over. The guy, when he goes in and like, Bill, you're diabetic today, and have been probably for 5 years. We just finally picked up on it. But, there's just better testing to do. So many things that we can do to help patients age gracefully. Hopefully we give you more longevity, but that's not my primary focus. My primary focus is quality. I have a slide in my slide deck, and it shows like longevity. And it shows a gentleman in a wheelchair in a nursing home, and it shows a lady the same age who's doing the high jump at some, competition. Which one do you want to be? So longevity is not always the answer. We want that quality of life as well.
Talking about quality of life, I have some experience with Alzheimer's in my family, and then with another gentleman that I took care of. It's an evil disease. It's something I think that's in the back of everyone's mind. Am I at risk of this? And you were talking about earlier, there's some research, these new tests, our brain is significantly involved in our health, even in cellular medicine. Talk to us a little bit. You work with some nursing homes, or you have relationships managing this segment of society as well. Talk to us about the Alzheimer's.
Yeah, so I think Alzheimer's, maybe besides cancer, is the scariest thing for me personally, for myself and my patients. And maybe Alzheimer's is number one, dementia, because not only, because at some point, if I get dementia, I'm not even going to realize I have dementia.
Right.
But my family is going to be, and I know you and I've talked about your experience with a friend a very close friend that had dementia and what you had to go through as a caretaker. I don't like at all the thought that one day I could possibly not know my family or my friends, and I've got to have my kids, doing things they just shouldn't have to do for their parents. I always joke, but I'm not really joking. I have a very deep tank at my property, and I'm always like, just kind of push me up to the edge and give me a little nudge, and Dad roamed off one day and fell in the tank. I mean, in all seriousness, who wants to be like that? The good news is the research, and so let's go back to traditional model. And I still dabble in the traditional model because, as you said, I'm over a couple of memory care units, and I still have a traditional outside of my clinic practice that I've had for years. I have a couple of nurse practitioners that help me with that. And dementia is such a sad, sad disease. And the medications that we have, in my humble opinion, aren't worth a squat. They're just not good medications. They push off the disease process a little bit, and I stress a little bit. They really just don't do much. There's even a new medication out. It's not doing much. I mean, these products, ultimately where it goes is prevention. If we can prevent these people from getting dementia, or early dementia treated, then we have some actual options. The problem is it's not in the traditional model. So if a person is, and this is the unfortunate aspect, sometime economically, you have a patient, they're on Medicare, they can't afford anything else. These treatments simply aren't available for them. But there is a test that just came out called Cytox. Actually, they're out of the UK. It is a saliva test, so it's very easy to collect. Obviously, you just put some saliva in a test tube and send it off. There is a little questionnaire that the patient will fill out, and they have been able to. What's the best way to explain this? They've been able to isolate and figure out what little snippets of our DNA make us prone to getting Alzheimer's disease. They can then do a real-time comparison of what your profile looks like and actually give you a true risk factor for developing Alzheimer's as you age. And so I did this. And by the way, it's been in the UK for about a year. It just got approved in the United States. Yes, it's going to be a cash pay test because I think with time insurances will pick it up, but it's not there yet. It's not a crazy expensive test. It's under $1,000. So, and the good news is it's really kind of a one-time test. So it's not like, hey, let's do it today and we'll repeat it in 6 months. So you're continuing to pay for it. And I see a lot of uses for this, but the places that I really think this is going to be useful is I'll use my wife for an example. She has a strong family history of Alzheimer's disease. Her grandmother had Alzheimer's, her mom had Alzheimer's. So guess what she's worried about getting? Now, the good news I always tell her is there are risk factor modifications that you can do that her mother and grandmother did not do because they didn't know, and she is doing. So as you and I talked about, 40% of Alzheimer's disease is risk factors that you can control. Things like not smoking, things like not drinking too much, things like getting good exercise and sleeping well, things like balancing your hormones. These are all things that we can do, lowering stress in our life. These are all things that we can do to tip the balance into our own favor. But the test, I think, could be really good for people like my wife who can take the test and maybe, just maybe, she's genetically different and she's not high risk. She can let it go. She can move on with her life and say, okay, I'm low risk. I'm not high risk, even though I thought I was. I don't have to worry about this down the road. Or it'll really focus her and say, crap, I figured I was high risk and I am. And now maybe I need to look at some of these different things in addition to risk factor modification. But one of the doctors I did it with, I thought bring up a great thing. He said, why not test teenagers? What if you have a son who shows high risk for Alzheimer's disease when he gets older? Maybe not do football. Maybe we should take them out of high impact sports where they're going to be hitting their head, because we know that those things also are risk factors for dementia down the road. So maybe this is at a point where we can do these things on some of our younger patients to just say, hey, let's just make sure we're okay genetically, because if you knew your son was high risk, would you let him go out and play football? I don't think you would, and nor would I. So I hadn't thought about that. I was like, wow, that's a really, really great thought of maybe where to use this test. And then, if you want me, do you want to kind of go into some of the new things with Alzheimer's disease?
Yeah,
right
the
now?
New treatments you were talking about that.
Yeah. So so again, unfortunately, we're not walking in the traditional model right now. Because unfortunately, traditional model is what I can write a prescription for and go down to Walgreens and get this afternoon. That's your traditional model. There is a fabulous PhD doc, Dr. Goodnow, who has some amazing research on Alzheimer's disease. I actually just signed up for I've had the pleasure of hearing him lecture 3 different times over the last 6 weeks. He happened to be at 3 different conferences that I was at. And actually, I'm going to hear him again for the 4th time this weekend. And so I went ahead and signed up for his course, but he has discovered this in the brain called plasmalogens. And guess what decreases with age in our brain? Plasmalogens. Okay. And he has figured out a way to, and these plasmalogens are basically kind of the coating on our nerves, and they're what's protecting these pathways in our brain. And some people deplete these more than others. And he's actually created a blood test where you can test for plasmalogens. So let's say I test you, Steve, for Alzheimer's disease, and sure as hell you're high risk. Then the next thing I would recommend to you is let's do this blood work. Let's see what you're deficient in. And then we can actually, yes, it's his products that he's got proprietary, but they work. Now we can put you on some things to replace these things in the brain, these plasmalogens that you will need so that your body can regenerate nerves and not get to the point of dementia. He's showing great success with this. There's another doctor in California that he works with, Dr. Jordan, Sheldon Jordan, who's using that technology, but also backing it up with something we've talked about before called exosomes. And exosomes are pulled out of the umbilical cord of babies. Moms give consent. And they're, the great thing about exosomes is that they are considered the motherboard for stem cells. And a stem cell is a cell that can turn into any type of cell that you need. Okay. So basically when you infuse exosomes, and typically you'll infuse billions of exosomes IV. Okay. And and they can go to different parts of our body that have inflammation, have issues. These exosomes are so smart, they go find these things. Okay. The problem is, so the hippocampus is the big issue with Alzheimer's disease. Well, if I put a few billion exosomes in your arm, only so many are going to make it to the hippocampus. Well, Dr. Jordan has figured out with his patents that he can actually use focus ultrasound and focus it on the hippocampus, which will actually attract the exosomes to that area of the body that's diseased. He actually has done a study where he took normal mice. Okay. Couldn't do this in humans, but he took normal mice. He was able to basically put a probe into their brain, into the hippocampus. He was able to degenerate the hippocampus through some sort of a medication. And basically he will take a young, healthy mouse and make them old. This mouse now, loses its hair. It gets fat. It has no interest in sex. It can't learn little tricks like going through the maze to go find the food. But when he puts the exosomes in the pipette back into the hippocampus, the hair comes back, the fat falls off, the sex comes back. It now can learn how to do these things again. And he's actually now showing in humans that he can reverse stages of dementia by doing this treatment. So between these docs who are really out there with these new treatments, there really is some hope in the future. Now people go, well, why isn't it gaining steam? Well, again, big pharma can't really use these things. These aren't big pharma things. Okay. These are all for the realm of more alternative. Unfortunately our system is set up for big pharma and big pharma only. And you kind of have to claw, dig, and scratch to find this technology for a lot of these patients suffering from this. It's expensive. I mean, it's definitely not, unfortunately, not everyone can afford it. But there are things out there that we can do. So I think this Cytox test is going to be huge just to be able to start. For me as the provider, okay, who do I need to concentrate on the brain more versus others? It's mainly, if anything, for me to be able to know, okay, this guy's high risk, this lady is not. I need to really concentrate on brain with this person. Over here, maybe we concentrate on some other stuff. It just gives us and it will definitely, I don't think there will be anybody not focused if you come back with a test like this and it shows you're high risk for dementia. I mean, it simply will, bring your focus where it needs to be.
Really been excellent. The intent of these conversations that Dr. Kris and I want to have is to encourage primary physicians that there are other things that you can do to improve your practice. The original reason you went into medicine in most cases is you want to help patients get better. You want to make a difference. And I think these conversations are great for that audience. Obviously, if you're listening as an end user, you need to consult your physician before, this is educational conversation we're having. We're not prescribing, and you need to consult your physician. I think this, the audience that wants to be involved in these conversations, they want to take ownership. They want to work with their physician. You have physicians that want to work with patients who care about their health, and I think this is excellent. Dr. Kris, is there any way that folks can kind of maybe get plugged in? Maybe they want to go to one of these conferences. Maybe they want to learn more about this. Where would you encourage them to connect with you?
Well, the easiest way is just to email me. And heck, just this morning, I've had a couple of providers reach out to me. So we're always trying to, I don't mind popping on the phone and just having a 30-minute conversation and and we don't charge for that kind of stuff. We just want to get to know the providers better and where would they like to start, and if nothing else, maybe I can guide them on some, different ways to go, because so many of these providers sometimes will not know, and they'll sign up for stuff that is either maybe above them or maybe it's not the right training for them. And so we can really help them focus on that. So easiest way is just to email me, Dr. Kris with a K, DRKRIS at theresearchclinic.com is the easiest way. And be more than happy to have a conversation and try to see if we can help or get them where they need to be, so, or at least tell them what's on the horizon for some of these different educations that are coming.
Perfect. And then Dr. Kris is available for speaking. Maybe you have an organization that is considering this, or you would like for them to be educated or introduced to some of these concepts. Dr. Kris is popular in these presentations. And so that would be an opportunity as well.
Yeah, we would love that. Even if it's just somebody that wants to come in and talk to maybe the organization about some general wellness things that everyone can do that don't cost money. That's something else, just to try to help, employers even keep their employees healthier and happier and doing better.
All right, excellent. If you want to learn more about Dr. Kris's clinic, it's the researchclinic.com in Texas, Weatherford, Texas. So that's where his common sense comes from. Being a Texan, you get to talk to a doctor that cares and likes your questions and works with you as well. It's got a great practice, very popular, other things to learn there too. Okay, Dr. Kris, any last words before we wrap this up?
No, just the weather today is beautiful here in Texas. It's not too hot, thank God. Unlike my wife, I like it when it cools off.
Good. It's coming. Same here. I'm in Texas as well, in Amarillo. So beautiful day, nice and cool. Okay, well, that's a wrap. Stay tuned for more episodes coming soon. Thanks for joining the Dr. Kris podcast. If you learned something today and you want to connect and get more information, visit our website, www.drkris.life, where you can find more great information or even schedule a time to learn how you can engage with Dr. Kris. Be sure to follow, like, share, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Dr. Kris podcast.